Namaste, my dear friends. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. In today's session, we're circling back to the Bija mantra sounds that we started out with in the very beginning of the workshop. So let's just find a nice, comfortable seated position, close our eyes, take a few breaths to center ourselves and quiet the thoughts. Today, our opening mantra that we will share is the pranava 3 times, followed by the Bija mantra sounds. We'll begin at the Muladhara and end with Om. So let's begin. Take a breath in. Om. 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 More or less the same rhythm and speed. We'll begin with the Bija mantra of the Muladhara. Take a breath in. Lam. Ram. Ram. Yam. Ham. Om. Shanti, shanti, shanti. And exhale, release the pose and open your eyes. So let's begin. The Bija sounds, as we know, the chakra Bija sounds, are not so much that they represent the element of earth, water, or fire, as much as the focus is prescribed upon that chakra. So what do we mean by prescribe? Prescribe means that we place it there or we put it there. So that's an action that we are asked to carry out. In this case, the action is focus at certain chakras. So the elements, remember, come from Samkhya philosophy. So again, if you are not familiar with it, I haven't done it, but I will. I'll give some links to Samkhya philosophy. So in Tantra, which is also based in large part on the element part of Samkhya philosophy, they ask us in the meditation to bring our attention and focus of earth qualities or the earth element to the Muladhara chakra, which is the Bija sound of Lam. So when I am chanting Lam, I am prescribing the earth element or that focus of the earth element to the Muladhara chakra. What are qualities of the earth element? Strength, stability, resistance, support. Now, there's many others too that you can look at. I just chose some right now. So that is the earth quality. Vam, the Bija sound for the Swadhisthana chakra, the element is water. So what are qualities of water? Coolness, moisture, lubrication, nourishment. And just think about that. Think about all the different relationships you think about with water. Immediately comes to mind for me is gardening. You're nourishing the plants with water. Ram, the fire element, is the Manipura Chakra. Here we have qualities of fire is heat, light, color. So generally when we think of the fire element, we also think of transformation. Yam is the air quality of the Anahata chakra. So here we have movement, flow, change, increases and decreases in speed, stimulation. Those are qualities that we associate with the air element, which is associated with the Bija sound of yum. See how we start linking them all together? The Vishuddhi chakra, the Bija sound is hum, and the element, the qualities of the element of ether are prescribed upon this chakra. That is, ether is has the qualities of space, of openness, being receptive, of releasing. We're going to get to Om a little bit later because that's a bigger one, but here are the 5 elements that we've spoken about in terms of the Bija mantras. And remember, it is a prescription, not a description. We are prescribing, we are not describing. Something just to think about. Before we get to Om, I wanted to talk about how the chakra system is related to the nadi system in Ayurveda and in yoga. So we know that the nadis are energy channel systems. The central channel, which is along your spine, is called the Sushumna channel. That is the main nadi channel. And that is also where spiritual awakening occurs. Up the Sushumna channel. On each side of the Sushumna channel are 2 nadis. The right side is the Pingala, the left side is the Ida. There are very important roles in your spiritual evolution that are happening in these 3 nadis. As prana is flowing up and down, the right side and the left side, the Pingala and the Ida, as that prana, that vitality, that life force is going up and down, that flow is in constant flux. The movement can be slow, it can be fast, it can get blocked in certain areas. That flow of prana is characterized by your perception of dualism. Now remember, either you may not be familiar with it, but we're going to talk about it later when we get to the Shadarshans. But this perception of dualism is spoken about in the Vedas, it's spoken about in Samkhya philosophy, it's spoken about in yoga, but it is our feelings of association and attachment to this physical world around us. Now, in some of the Indian philosophies, that physical world is not real. In other philosophies, as in Tantra, it is very real. So we'll get into that. But the important thing to remember is that it is the prana flowing through the right and the left nadi systems keeps us in flux. What we're trying to do with chakra meditation, and specifically chakra meditation on the bija sounds, not the petals, all right? This is an important point. Chakra bija mantras, not the petals, helps to purify that constant flux in the Pingala and Ida channels, purify that prana and dissolve the impurities and the obstacles and have that flow come up the Sushumna channel instead. Now if this is a new concept to you, perhaps if you've read the sutras or you're familiar with them, in the third chapter on accomplishments, remember there is one sutra that says, be careful. You may attain different yogic powers, mystical powers of levitation or whatever, but that's not the point. Do not be tempted and stay there. with those powers, because that's not the point of yoga. The point of yoga is to experience the different levels of samadhi, but we might get stuck within those yoga attainments of spiritual, of mystical powers. And it's the same idea here. If we want to purify the nadis and have a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience, it is sometimes prescribed by gurus to not bring all your focus to the petals of the chakras, but to keep your focus on the chakra Bija sound in your meditation. Now that's not for everybody, and I'm not a person to say which path is for you. But definitely there are certain yogis in history who have not simply, but they have focused only their chakra meditation on the Bija mantras and not on the petals. But I'm not here to say that one is better than the other. I'm just saying that they're two different paths. And remember, in the beginning, I said practice, or I asked you to practice to your capacity. Now, for some of us, we need that clarification and that purification within the petals of the chakras before we feel really comfortable, authentically comfortable to only focus on the Bija mantras. How do you know which path is best for you? Do the practice. Do the practice, trust yourself, and see where it leads you. But what I'm explaining to you is just the concept of the Bija mantra meditation and what is happening within your nadi system. Now, Om is a very interesting Bija mantra for the Ajna chakra. Om is not specifically mentioned in the Rig Veda. Remember, the Rig Veda is one of the oldest pieces of written literature still in existence. However, later in some of the Vedas and other yogic literature, remember we talked about the different literature categories that came after the Vedas. You will find the mention of Om there. So we know that we see Om in the Samkhya philosophy, in yoga. It's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Om is the energy of the Purusha, and it's manifested. That energy is then manifested in this physical world and the universe in Prakriti, and it is the first evolute of Samkhya. Now, I know this, for people who haven't studied Samkhya philosophy, this may mean nothing to you. So just give me a moment to sort of explain this. Purusha and Prakriti, you may also know as Shiva and Shakti. Those words may be more familiar to you. Purusha is the unmanifested supreme consciousness that has always existed, according to these philosophies. Prakriti is the part of Purusha that is manifest here in the world that we live in. And so the sound of Om is that first manifestation of Shiva. And from there, the universe is created, from that sound vibration. The letter Om, the recitation of the sound Om, also represents human perception, how we perceive things. And we know that we perceive things, even without looking at yoga literature, we know that no two people have the same perception of a sunset or of a cool breeze. We all have a different ways to describe it and experience. So human perception, Om, also represents all the different levels of our human perception. So here we have the representation of Om. And each curve and line has a meaning. So let's go through it. So you see the bottom curve on the left side of the letter, is our waking conscious state. In our waking conscious state, here in Prakriti, which is manifested Purusha, we experience, we perceive the world around us through our senses, touch, smell, sight, and such, right? Those senses then send a message to our brain. Our brain then analyzes that information and makes a judgment about it. From that judgment, you have an emotional response. From all this that's happening, you can create a memory so that you can learn. And you, with these emotional responses, you begin to have a habitual response to certain stimuli and analysis of information that becomes a habit. So all this is happening in your waking state. If we go to the right-hand side, the curve that goes down, that's the dream state. So now, excuse me, now our perception is changing a bit, right? Because now we're dreaming. So what does this mean? It means that we are still associating with our five senses, the stimuli and the analysis going on in our brain. But as when we are actually dreaming, you can fly, you can jump higher than you usually can jump. Um, the the physical consequences of certain actions that we take are no longer limited to the waking world. So we can jump 10 feet high in the air. We can fly. We can eat 2 dozen hot dogs and not get sick. So there's a bit of a disassociation from the our physical senses, and that our imagination has more weight than what we do in our waking state. But we still have association, we're still attached to those senses. We're just not bound by them. But all the same workings in terms of the brain, the analysis, the memory, all that is still happening. So our perception is still based on the waking state, but it's unbound. Then you have the deep sleep state. So this is your unconscious mind, but it's not bound by the senses. However, it is still bound within this philosophy by accumulated memories and past life actions and consequences. So another way to look at it is, in your waking state, you receive stimuli, you analyze it in the brain. Some part of that emotional reaction to the stimuli falls down into a deep lake. So think of it as a drop of water falling down into a deep lake. In the dream state, that drop is still on the upper surface of the lake. So it's accessible, but it's not bound because it's within that big body of water. So it doesn't have the same boundaries as it does in the waking state. Now, that little piece of water, that drop of water, can sink really, really deep into the lake in the deep dream state. So now it is no longer accessible to you because it's so, so deep into that lake. But it is accessible to you in terms of in a deeper meditation. Some people can access those memories, and that's what the different levels of samadhi is all about in the Sutras of Patanjali. So we'll talk about that. But for now, just think of it as your karma from past lives. Those are all those little drops of water deep, deep, deep in the lake. And In the waking and dream state, we cannot access them. Then, if you look at the top of the Om sign, the little half moon, that represents Maya. So Maya is this veil of illusion that's in front of us, let's say, and clouds our perception of what is real and what is not real. So in the non-dualistic point of view, in Indian philosophy, they believe that this world around us is not real. It's simply an illusion that we are living within. And the sutras of Patanjali tell us when we think that Maya is real, that's when we put obstacles in front of us to understanding who we really are, which is a soul. We're not really this carbon unit of a human body walking around. We're actually a soul. So Maya is that illusion. For those who have studied the Tantric wisdom goddesses, think of Dhumavati, goddess Dhumavati here. Samadhi is the dot on top. And this is true perception of what is real and what is not real and who you really are. So this is what Om represents. The different levels of perception that as human beings we experience. In the waking state, when we're dreaming, the deep dream state where those drops of perception fall really, really deep down into the lake. Maya, the illusion in front of us of what's real and not, and then the perception of samadhi. Another way to put it, and this is what Swami Rama in the Himalayan tradition of meditation, you'll see this type of a diagram a lot. You also see it in Tantra when we are talking about the goddess Sundari, who lives in the 3 cities. The realm of the 3 cities, another name for it is Turiya. So you might have seen that somewhere. So look here on the left side, see the body and the 5 senses and our actions. The reason why breath here is connecting the conscious mind is because we know, whether you practice yoga now or not, you know that when you're very, very angry or upset, your rate of respiration and the quality of respiration changes as when you're calm. So there is a connection between your emotional state and the stimuli that your conscious mind is receiving. So that's why the breath arrows are there. So you have your 5 senses and actions of the body. Has an influence on the conscious mind. Influence on the conscious mind, what I mean is that it's influencing the process of cognition. Then your unconscious mind has 2 parts. You have the dreaming state and the deep dream. So remember, we talked about that. The active dreaming state is when that drop of water is in the surface part of the lake, so it's accessible. The deep sleep or the latent part of your unconscious mind is when that drop of water sinks very, very deep and it's no longer accessible. Then the 4th state of perception is the one who lives in the 3 cities or in Turiya. Another way to look at this, and it's in the description here, is that those different perceptions or states of mind can be will, action, knowledge, the knower, the object of knowledge, and the process of knowing. So something to ponder on how you view perception and how that perception changes through your chakra meditation. And it's not an easy process, it takes time. So if this all sounds like googly goo to you, don't worry. We're going to keep connecting the dots, and with your practice, this is going to make sense over time. So I think we'll stop here. Thank you very much, everyone. Shall we share the pranava and really think when you are chanting Aum, think about the letter of Om and the meaning of these different states of perception. So let's bring our hands together, close the eyes. Perhaps behind your eyes, in your mind, you see the image of Om. And one time, let's share the pranava. Take a breath in. Shanti, shanti, shanti. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. And have a good day. And I'll see you in our next video.